So today I like to welcome Stephen Washington. Hello, Stephen. How are you doing?
I'm well, Viv. How are you?
I'm very well.
Good.
Very nice weather, very hot weather here in Sweden tonight, which
Mm,
is, you shouldn't complain. You know, we got long winters.
mm.
Where are you based, Stephen?
I'm in LA, in Los
LA.
Angeles, California.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah. Downtown.
Downtown, busy, busy.
Yeah.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for coming today. We are going to cover a lot in this short amount of time. Now, Stephen, can you please tell me who are you?
Mm. I'm Stephen Washington. I am a 50-year-old man, originally from the East Coast of California, East Coast of the United States. I was a professional dancer for many years. I was a dancer in Disney's The Lion King on Broadway, as well as a national tour. I eventually moved on from my successful dance career and became a Pilates instructor and then a Qigong instructor and a massage therapist. I also am a person with long-term recovery. I've been sober for about 20 years. This July will be 21 years. And my passion in life is to help people to help themselves through mindfulness and movement. And I do that through my online community, SWE Studio, where I create wellness content for my community. And I also write books. My book, Recovering You, Soul Care and Mindful Movement for Overcoming Addiction. At the heart of what I do is just teach self-care because self-care is important and we all
Yeah.
need it. We all
Mm-hmm.
need it, and most of us don't get enough of it.
Yeah.
And it's my mission in life to help people help themselves.
What a beautiful vision.
I
It's
love it.
absolutely amazing. It's funny that with life, how, our struggles turns into missions and leading you to
Mm,
higher self. Do you think
absolutely.
what you're doing now is your higher self?
Absolutely. What I teach is basically what I need for myself. And one of the things that has gotten me to this point of being so proficient at what I do is because I needed to do it all. I needed all these tools. I needed all these practices to help me live a better life. And when people hear my story and hear what my challenges have been, you can see how there is a need for all the practices that I teach to be a part of my life, and I love it. And the thing is, I think one of the ways that I connect with people is through that level of authenticity. That
Mm-hmm.
what I'm teaching you is what I do for myself, and this is why I do it for myself, and this is why you should consider doing these things for yourself, because it's all about taking care of ourselves. That's our number one job on this planet, is to take care of ourselves. And if we all took care of ourselves better, we would probably take care of each other better
Mm.
as well, and the planet as well.
Fascinating. So what got you into drinking? Do you know the reason behind it? Why did you end up having an addiction?
Absolutely. Well, I think that there's a lot of different reasons why I started to drink. One of the reasons I think is that I come from a family of drinkers and substance abusers. That's the way that people solve their problems or coped with the stresses of life, was through substances, through things that were outside of themselves. Many people in my family have dealt with trauma and unhealed trauma. And one of the ways that they dealt with the symptoms of all that was to check out. And so kids pay attention. We're like sponges and we absorb everything. And so I watched and I learned. And when I grew up, that's what I did. I found that drinking, smoking cigarettes, doing drugs worked for me for a very long time. It helped me
Did,
to live life.
did you feel neglected as a child? Did you feel unseen, unheard?
Yeah, of course. My parents had a very destructive marriage. And when it exploded, when it imploded, it was a very big and traumatic thing. And so they were busy. They were busy creating the mess that they were living in, that they didn't really have the time or the energy or the know-how to parent in the way that I needed to be parented. And my sister would probably tell you the same as far as what she needed as well. So yeah, I think feeling not seen, not heard, is definitely a part of my story. So it's funny that I have a career of sharing my voice, using my voice, and it's me using my voice and sharing my experience, strength, and hope that connects to people's hearts.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
and we realize that we are actually much more alike than we are different.
Yeah. And I think you were talking about trauma as well. There's been a lot of generational trauma that's been passed on, and I can relate to your story very, very
Yeah,
much. And I mean, most people were very unconscious 20, 30 years ago. So I think we all have some trauma with us that we all have to deal with and face and hopefully heal.
absolutely.
Now, a lot of people are waking up and entering into high consciousness and raising the vibration and embarking on this healing journey. Have you gone through like a spiritual awakening, a healing journey on your own? Did you have the whole
Absolutely.
onset? Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when I think of spiritual awakening, I think of it as an ongoing process. It's not just like one experience and then you're done.
Right.
I think for me, there was a cracking of the armor, that I had this protective shell around me, that this cracking of the armor that allowed the light to come in, that allowed inspiration, new ideas, new ways of viewing myself and the world. That began to happen. I think for me, that began to happen around the time that I got sober 20 years ago. That was such a life-changing experience for me. And it's started a path of continued enlightenment, continued self-growth and self-exploration and expansion. And it comes in waves, it ebbs and flows. I feel as though right now I am in a very interesting growth experience as well at 50 years old, that we never stop learning, we never stop growing, we never stop changing, especially if we're open to it. I think that life calls upon us to change and to grow, and we can either go with the flow of that or we can try to go against it. And I think the level of suffering that we experience is contingent upon whether we're going with the flow or going against the flow. Um, but as far as an awakening, absolutely, I've been on this spiritual journey for quite some time, and I anticipate being on it until the very last breath that I
Yeah.
take. And
Mm-hmm.
because I look at everything as a spiritual experience.
For sure.
I think if I'm very comfortable using the term God, and I see God in everything. I see God in everything because I feel as though my higher powers fingerprints are on everything and every experience that I have, whether it feels good or whether it feels bad, and everything in between. It's all
Mm.
something for me to learn and grow from if I'm willing to take that ride.
I was listening to a podcast the other day, and about this death experiences, people leaving their lives and coming back, and
Mm,
they all have the same experience when they are dead, so to speak.
mm,
But no one wants to come back to life. Number one, most people that passed over want to stay on the other side, and they feel that we are this oneness, we all connected. This is, unconditional love. But then a lot of people also say they have a mission. They're here to fulfill the mission and to grow and evolve. And every single one of us have a mission and a purpose in life. And the only purpose to be here is to grow.
I agree with you. It's interesting what you say about people having these near death or these near death experiences, um, and what you say about what they what they experience when they're on the other side and how they don't want to come back. It's funny to hear you say that because it makes me think of a conversation that I had with my friend Monica not that long ago. She had one at a very young age. I think she was 14 or 15. And
Right.
she expressed a similar
Mm-hmm.
feeling. And also my friend Anita Morjani, she expressed something similar as well. I think we're all here to do something. We're all here to do something with this time that we have. And I think that that's very different for each and every one of us. And that thing that we're here to do isn't always a grand thing, but yet it can be a very meaningful thing. And that's one of the things that I try to infuse into my work as well. The self-care work, whether it's writing, recovering you, helping people to take better care of themselves in recovery, out of recovery, and also my membership community, SWE Studio. I want to give people tools to help them live their best life and to help them to take better care of themselves. So once you take care of yourself the way that you need to and should, then it frees us up to consider these things like why am I here? What is my purpose? What is my purpose today? It allows us to set intention for our lives. Like, what is it that I want to do? How do I want to serve,
Serve, yes.
or what
Yeah.
what what can I do that will serve my highest good? Those are the things that I think practices like Qigong, mindful movement practices, meditation, uh, help us to give space for those insights to come through, and then for us to eventually take action upon them.
Yeah, and we live in Recovering You. The book is obviously about how to recover from any kinds of addiction. And we live in a world that is super duper addictive. I mean, there's so many addictions everywhere.
Yeah.
How did we get
Yeah.
into this mess?
Well, I think it's just this disconnection from self. This disconnection from self. I think in part, when it's a great question that you ask, and it's setting me on a on a chain of thoughts about this. But I think that there's so much suffering in the world. There's so much, like we talked about trauma. We're having this conversation nationally and internationally about trauma. And one of the things that we realize is that there are so many different traumatic experiences that one could have, and that those experiences are actually quite common. It's not just about receiving being traumatized by being in a war or by being raped. Or, yeah, there's so many different things that can be traumatic, but one of the things that are being talked about now is just how common it is. If your parents got divorced, that is one of the things that's on the list of traumatic experiences that you could go through. If you have a parent who is mentally ill, that's another thing that can go on the list as a traumatic experience. Um, so many things. And I think that because we have those experiences and because there isn't enough information or knowledge or access to the resources to help us heal from that, that's, I think, when we start to go outside of ourselves to seek some sort of relief, some sort of pain relief, some sort of distraction, something to help us feel better in our skin, something to help us deal with the circumstances that we're living in. I think that that's a big part of why we're all seeking some sort of change or transformation. And I think addiction is just another transformation. We're trying to, at least for me, I was trying to transform where I was, what I was doing, how I was feeling into something else. And I was doing it through chemicals. I was doing it through substances. I was playing a chemist, trying to get just the right, formula to make me feel a certain way. And we can do that with behaviors like overworking, exercise, food, sex, the internet, social media, our devices. There's so many things that we could do.
Something that's really like emerged from a podcast is the addictive business models. Dr. Joni Flint talked about this in the processed food industry, using the same as the tobacco industry. I can imagine other areas, not just the food industry, would use the same business model, addictive business model, but we're not aware about it. What's your viewpoint on that? Do you think that is actually happening?
Can you clarify?
I mean, you are addicted to iPhone, mobile phone. I mean, I lost my iPhone the other day for a brief moment and I almost had a panic attack, How can you survive without your mobile phone? But you're not aware about it. You are addicted to your phone. And the kids are addicted to screens, but they don't know it. So what I'm saying is there's a lot of areas of business out there that are trying to get people and children and anyone for that matter hooked and become addictive to that thing, that food, whatever, that behavior.
Yes, I see where you're going with this, and I
Do you
agree
get
with
me?
you. I do. That makes me think of articles I've read and interviews that I've watched where people who work in tech talk about the destructive nature of social media, certain social media like Facebook or other things that gets pumped out into the world for people to consume, but yet in their own lives, they wouldn't let their loved ones go anywhere near it because they understand what the underlying energy is behind it, which is to get people to become dependent upon it, and then they make money off of
And
that.
distracted as well, I would imagine. You can't think clearly, having an addiction, you are brain fog, you're not awake. It's like you're sleepwalking.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think that that's something that's part of the whole package. And I think there is a lack of awareness about it. I think that people gravitate towards these things. They get the dopamine rush from it, and then we just keep returning back to that in order to get that, and we don't realize what's happening underneath it. And I think it's something that we all experience. Like you said, you lost your phone and you panicked for a moment.
Oh,
But there was
yeah,
a
big
time
time.
there's a time when all of us didn't have, none of us had smartphones, and we were doing just fine.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Life was actually quite simple, a lot
Mm-hmm.
simpler then. So there are always pluses and minuses on all these things. And I think also one of the true definition of addiction is when we repeatedly repeat a behavior that has negative consequences, and even though there are negative consequences, we continue to do it over and over again.
Yeah.
We lose the power of choice with that. And I think that that's something that happens, I think, with all of us with these devices too. It's such an interesting conversation, and we could talk about it for hours and still only scratch the surface of it.
I think it's important to raise it because, as we are in a very addictive society, why are we in addictive society? There's many components, of course, but it is interesting to hear your viewpoint on it. What is the most common addiction? Have you got any idea of that? Which one is the most?
Gosh, I don't know what the most common addiction is. I think that the statistics just in general, even just for alcohol abuse, is quite staggering. But I would probably say that our devices,
Yeah.
our social media. I was driving in my car the other day here in downtown LA, and I stopped at a light, and there was a bus stop on the corner, and there was 20 people, and I literally counted how many people were on their cell phone and how many people were just standing there present. I think there were two people who were standing there present without their device, and everyone else was head down looking at their phone, which creates a whole other list of problems just physiologically when we're in this posture for hours and hours and hours. But I would say it's probably our devices is probably that, because it's so common.
And everyone has a smartphone, so basically the entire population is addicted. Addicted
Yeah.
to. Uh,
And I'll one up you on that. I would be willing to say that probably one of the most common addictions that we have is the addiction of fear. There's so much fear being manufactured and pumped out into the culture that so many people are responding to fear, whether it's fear about the pandemic, whether it's fear about politics, fear about other groups, other racial groups or religious groups, or here in this country now we're talking that there's the whole big thing about this war on LGBTQ rights, and all what's underneath all that is just fear,
yeah.
fear of people becoming equal. We're all, we're born equal. I think we're all have two arms, two legs. We all have
Yeah,
hearts. We all
human
have feelings.
beings.
We all have feelings. Human beings,
Yeah.
and we should all enjoy the same rights. But for some people, if I have the same rights as you have, it's as if you are suffering just because I have. It doesn't take away anything that you have, but because I have what you have, what you enjoy so freely, people take it as they're losing something. So there's that, and I think behind all that is fear. It's fear,
And
and
you know as
fear.
well that fear is an illusion. Fear
It
does not
is.
exist, you know.
Yeah.
It's just a thought in your head, and you're not your
Yeah.
thoughts.
Yeah, and it's something that we learn, and I think it's something that's passed down. We talked about generational trauma. I think there are fears that we sometimes inherit. I talk about that in the book too. Some of the fears that fueled my addiction, I think, are some of the fears that I inherited from my family.
Like people
Fear,
pleasing, codependency.
yeah, or just fear, like fear around money, like poverty consciousness, fear that
Right.
at any moment what you have can be taken away or you can lose and you'll be, living on the street, that type of thing. So then they didn't know that we live in an abundant universe. I have a very different way of looking at life than my parents had. I tend to look more at what I do have instead of what I don't have.
Well, that's a law of attraction as well. So
Yeah, and there's so much to be said about that, and I firmly believe in that because I can see the evidence of it in my own life.
how did you manage to heal the fear of prosperity or money? Did you put a conscious effort into healing that fear, or did it just resolve by you doing your healing journey?
Well, here's the thing: it's a full-time job doing that. It's not like it's not like a one and done and I'm healed. It's just something that I have to continue to work on. And there are moments when I'll have an old fear around money, or like I had one yesterday for a moment, but I was able to, in the moment, uh, stop and examine the thought and have another thought, turn it around, remind myself that I don't have to be afraid of I don't have to be afraid, or I don't have to focus on what I don't have, or worry about not having enough. Uh, it's all, like you said, an illusion. And it's like when I really look at it, I have everything that I need. And because I have everything that I need, and I've always had everything that I need, there's no indication that tomorrow I won't have what I need. So trust and believe and live in the knowledge that the universe is abundant and I have everything that I need.
And
And if I
I
don't have it,
think
I don't need it.
exactly. And everything just is, I will say that, it is, everything just is. There's no judgment. It is
Yeah.
right now, here and now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, beautiful. Thank you for being so super authentic. I love it. Okay, we talked about what is your biggest fear, but you already told me your biggest fear, being, fear of money. Do you have any other fears as well, apart from that one?
Sure. I think because of my upbringing, fear of abandonment. And that's something that I continue to work on because I think that's something that just becomes part of your wiring. And then
Yes.
it takes time to rewire
Oh,
the
big time.
brain. Yeah, and change your responses to things, because there are things that can happen that will remind you of an original wound, and you have to remind yourself that, okay, this feeling is old, this feeling is historical, this feeling is not necessarily representative of what's happening right now. So to be able to employ those types of tools that I've gained through years of therapy and healing. So I think what's important for me to mention is that it's on my healing journey, it's not that something happens and I'm miraculously healed from a certain thing. It's all about practice. It's all about repetition. It's all about the continued process. I used to think when it came to spirituality and any kind of healing that it's just something that one day you're, after doing a certain amount of work, you're just healed. You're healed. This thing that you've been dealing with, you no longer have to deal with. I think for me, it's just been over time, just layers of whatever that issue is or that problem, it gets peeled back. It gets peeled back. It gets peeled back. And I get better and better at accepting some of those things as just being a part of being human, and just that process, and knowing that as long as I make progress towards releasing and letting go of some of the things that I hold with me, that's a really good thing. That's a really good thing, because that thing that once held me like this now maybe only holds me like that. And at moments, it doesn't hold me at all. But it's my reaction and response to it that's really important. That when I do have a moment of this, that I don't panic. I just breathe into it and I can loosen the grip. Does that make sense?
The path to freedom. I mean, if you have a thought that is stuck in your head, it's going to be a vendetta, that's not freedom. If you're obsessing. So everything is sort of intertwined.
Yeah. Yeah.
You have to embrace it all. You can't just do one thing. You have to look at it from the whole.
Yeah. I mean, we're all, I think most of us, many of us, like you alluded to earlier, are on this spiritual journey. We're on this path to enlightenment. And I think part of being human is that you're human too. So you have to balance the humanness, your humanness, and your spiritual self. You're not going to reach the full potential of the spiritual self until you are no longer here. As long as you're here, you have to still deal with the density of being where we are. And I think
in a body, yeah.
yeah. And I know that there's some people who might believe otherwise. And I think sometimes I look at that as just spiritual bypassing. And I'm not interested in spiritually bypassing things. I want to be in the process. I want to be in the moment. I want to be in the experience, and I want to acknowledge all sides of me. I think that my spiritual side is something that helps to lift me up, but I also think that my humanness helps to ground me as well. So I think it's this like, going back to traditional Chinese medicine, it's this blend and this blend and collaboration between yin and yang.
And there's so many different sides to a coin, everything is energy, and I think scientists are now starting to realize as well that I think studies are being done on the spiritual path, that we need both. We can't just have science and facts, but we also need the spiritual, because scientists know that everything is energy and vibrating at a high frequency.
Yeah. And my spiritual journey tells me that even in science, it's spiritual. Like I said, God is everything or nothing. And it's woven into everything, into the DNA of it all.
Right, Stephen, where do you hope we are in 10 years from your standpoint and your service that you're offering others?
Wow. Well, in 10 years, I hope that my work reaches even more people than it reaches today. And that we get to learn from one another on an even larger scale than where it is right now. Because what I enjoy most is connecting with people in terms of how the practices that I teach, how it impacts their lives. Like what happens when the rubber meets their road, and with these tools. And so I think it's just an expansiveness of that. And also 10 years from now, for my own growth and development to continue beyond where I am right now, so that I have even more to share and more opportunities to connect and reach people because of my own experience of living life
to its fullest. Beautiful. I love it.
Yeah.
Amazing. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we round up?
Well, I would just, again, I'd like to invite people to join my membership community, SWE Studio. It's affordable, accessible wellness content on demand. I wanted to create a platform where people can learn mindful movement practices like Pilates and Qigong, as well as meditation. I also teach laughter medicine and also dance to really address the whole person, body, mind, and spirit. And I wanted to do it in a really affordable way. So if people go to StephenWashingtonExperience.com, they can get more information about that and try out my 14-day free trial of the platform. And also check out my book, Recovering You, Soul Care and Mindful Movement for Overcoming Addiction. You can find that on Amazon and other booksellers. And yes.
Gorgeous.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming. Loved it. Beautiful soul.
Thank you so much.
Good luck.
Thank you.